Hey everyone, hope you are doing good. I'm currently just unloading the van for the last time in 2025. Today is Monday, the 22nd, December, and I don't have anything on the calendar between now and January 8th. So I'm not really accepting any jobs between that time, so I can take some time off with my family and enjoy the holidays. So I'm just unloading the van, all the carts. I leave all this stuff in here so I don't have to rebuild the van every time. Just a couple of stingers, apple boxes, a couple little lights, just simple stuff. But yeah, in this video, I want to talk to you guys about this little camera, the Nikon ZR. I've been using this quite a bit now on a lot of paid jobs, and it is working out pretty well. Not entirely how I was thinking it would, but I think it is a nice little camera for the price. So I'll show you guys a couple of productions that I've used this camera and how I have like incorporated it into my workflow, and the good and the bad. I'll tell you about what I like and what I hope Nikon will fix, maybe in a firmware update. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I'll see you guys over there. Okay, this is fun. There's my car. There's the shoot location right there. So this is the room we're in for this week. And the carts worked out great. I had to load in by myself, so I just rolled up each cart one by one. It was a little rough because it was snowing and the location was kind of far. So if I didn't have everything on wheels, it would have been pretty terrible. I did have to use this twice. So I came in, dropped all this stuff off, went back down with it empty, filled it back up. I just had to bring a lot of loose items that weren't on a cart. So a lot of this stuff. So yeah, it ended up working out, but I do need to build a fourth cart. So that way I don't have to do that again. But yeah, we're gonna get set up. Table talk is gonna be somewhere in this area. I have to miss the chandelier here with the menace arm, but might just kind of angle it off one axis, maybe move the table a little bit more like in this area, and then menace arm right over the top. So yeah, it's looking good. Okay, so I got everything kind of roughed in for the shoot tomorrow. It's hard to light and set up camera angles by myself when it's a 3-person panel. So this is just rough lighting, and then once I have actual people here to sit in, then I can dial it in a little bit more. But just to give you a quick rundown, so we got Video Village over here, and we got the cameras set up here. And I'm not streaming this. This is just kind of a backup that I'm recording to the hard drive, because I'm using a new recorder here called the Cine Trek Mixer Plus, but it doesn't do internal recording. So I'm outputting to my computer via OBS just to get a basic recording. I can also patch someone in if they want, like via Zoom, or if we, if we have a producer that can't make it tomorrow, we can patch them in. I got all the wireless units here, teleprompter set up here, and we're running 3 prompters. So we got one here, and one here. And pretty much every camera is like dedicated to a person, so they can look directly to camera and read from the prompter. And then this is just a wide shot, and I'm using the new Nikon ZR, just recording, just to make sure it's not gonna have any issues tomorrow. And since this doesn't do like dual recording, I'm doing a external monitor that I can record files to. So this is just a backup, and I'm using it to, yeah. And as far as lighting, we have this guy on a Menace Arm 600X. That's just giving us a general fill for the table. We do have another backlight. This is a Zhiyun Molus G300, I think. This is just giving a little bit of a backlight for these two people here. And then it's not on right now, but I'm probably gonna maybe see if I can boom this out or just get a nice little backlight for this person. Then also just a little cross fill there. Same with this one, a little back edge light and then a cross fill for this person. Then I just have a practical to hide that guy. This room has a set of a lamp in the corner as a practical. And the hardest part about shooting this room was the chandelier. It doesn't move, so obviously we have to work around that. Tomorrow I'm probably gonna unplug the bulbs, because if I turn off the house power, it turns off these guys, and I like these guys as like little practicals. Then I do have a Aperture 60X with a spotlight, just giving a little splash back there. That's pretty much it. So yeah, should be fun. We're well dialed in for tomorrow, so should be able to just wake up and get here and then just kind of like have people help me dial in the final lighting. I think this is going to get a tablecloth, probably a white one or black, I don't know, whatever looks best. So yeah, it's going to be good. So we got everything set up for the shoot, and honestly, once we're set, it's going to be like this for the whole day. So it's just a panel discussion, and we have to get through a lot of content, teleprompted content. So teleprompter was kind of essential on this job, just because everyone had their own script, and it was just going to be a whole lot of talking. So this was a great chance for me to really test out the Nikon ZR and see how it cuts with the Sony lineup, and honestly, I think it worked pretty well. I was shooting the red codec. This was the 4K version, and honestly, the footage was a little bit noisy. I know when you shoot RAW, it generally is a little bit noisy because it's not doing any noise reduction processing internally, like some of the other formats like MP4, H.265, that sort of thing. So I was expecting a little bit of noise, but I will say there was a lot more noise than I was anticipating. I wish I had a good solution to reduce noise. I've been using Premiere Pro for the longest time, and there are some plugins like Neat Video and some other plugins that you can use that help with the noise, but it is, for me, it's a little bit of a process using Neat Video. I'm not sure if my computer can handle it or what, but it just seems like it just takes forever to export and all that. So I typically try not to use any noise reduction. I know DaVinci Resolve has really good noise reduction kind of built into the program, so I might take a look at using that. I have DaVinci Resolve on my computer, so I might just see if I can run it through there and see if I can clean it up a little bit and then just export out a ProRes file or something like that. So after thinking about it, this is turning into more of a process than I was anticipating. I was hoping just to get a really nice high resolution master shot that was pretty streamlined, and I didn't have to do a bunch of work to it to make it look nice. And I messed around with a couple of the other codecs, and I can say without a doubt the only format worth really shooting in is the red codec on the Nikon. So if you get the Nikon and you plan on not shooting the red format. If you're going to look into the .mov files on this, just look pretty terrible in my opinion. There's not a whole lot of dynamic range. I actually prefer the Sony file versus the .mov files on here. And then the nlog is even noisier than the red files. So in my mind, the nlog is not usable and the H.265 is not usable. And when I say unusable, I mean if you already have a Sony FX3 or an A7 IV or FX6, it's not really worth it to switch to the Nikon ZR, in my opinion. Now, if you're starting from the ground up and you can't afford an FX3 or FX6, then yeah, this camera you can definitely make work. I know for me, I was looking for a little bit more elevated file than the Sony FX3. I haven't been disappointed with the FX3. I was just looking for something a little bit extra, I guess. So as far as resolution, getting into a 6K file or an 8K file, something that looked really nice as a master shot, and then you could punch in if you needed to. That's kind of the thought that I was hoping to achieve with this camera, but after editing it and kind of having to denoise it and heavily grade it, I just don't really think it's worth it. So on day 2, we were at a different location, and this one was just a talking head straight to a teleprompter. So I opted to use the FX3s just because they had gold mount batteries and they were just going to match and just be easier to move around, and I didn't have to worry about using the high data rate on the ZR. So I opted to use the FX3s for day 2. So after we were done in Indiana, I jumped back in the car and drove straight home. I had another 3-day shoot locally on a commercial, and I was a grip on the shoot, but I also rented out a lot of my equipment. So I had to make sure I was back for this shoot, and it was a pretty easygoing shoot. We had a huge crew. We had, dedicated gaffer. We had a couple of grips. So everything was pretty simple. And this was a fun little project. It was just a 30-second spot for a local university. And I had never worked with this crew before, but it was pretty awesome meeting some new locals. And hopefully we can work on some other stuff in the future or whatnot. It's always good to be connected, especially in your own local network. And after we wrapped day 3 here locally, I had a few days off, which was nice, but then I had to head to Georgia. This was near Trilith Studios. This was actually another 3-day shoot. So the first day we were just capturing some interview, kind of documentary style, with some B-roll on day 1 at someone's house. So on day 2 and day 3, this was another panel. It was obviously just 2 people instead of 3. So we were in this location for 2 days, and once everything was set up, we were just rolling through the content. And these were pretty long days, 8-hour days sort of thing. And also, this was the exact same equipment that I had brought with me on the Indiana shoot earlier. I didn't really change anything out, so we have the exact same setup essentially with lighting and cameras. So I thought I would give the Nikon ZR another chance and kind of see how it would do with dynamic range. I knew we were shooting against windows, so I kind of wanted to see what it would look like compared to some of the other cameras that I was using. And that's the one thing with the Sony cameras is we're pretty spoiled with dynamic range on the FX3s. I feel like it has really good dynamic range, and I was shooting the raw format on the Nikon ZR, the 4K R3D files. The biggest issue we were running into is just the light was changing so much outside. So once we kind of set everything and had
lighting, exposure the way we wanted, it would get really sunny. Obviously, shooting against windows, this happens quite a bit. So these were really long segments as well. I would say 30 minutes to an hour for each one. So it's really hard to shoot in this environment with natural light and so many windows that the light is just consistently changing. So we try to adjust in between each take. So some of these shots do look a little bit overexposed on the screen. Obviously, once we brought it in on the computer, the dynamic range was there, so we were able to recover some of the highlights and some of the shadows. So I feel like overall it looked pretty decent. So yeah, I guess the biggest question is, will I keep using the Nikon ZR? I think I will. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it in a multicam environment like this. It just seems like a little bit too much work compared to just using another FX3. But I will probably use the Nikon ZR in more commercial style. The only issue I'm going to run into is mostly on any commercial that I work on, they don't want to use a new camera. They don't want to use something different. They want, they either rent a camera package or they are very familiar with Sony and they want to use FX9 or FX6 or FX3, and that's kind of the look they want. They don't want to try something new. They don't want, no matter how good the Nikon camera is for its price, they just aren't used to it. So they don't want to experiment on their project. So that's going to be the hardest sell for the Nikon using it for commercial work. It will have to be either a passion project or it might be like a lower end project where they don't really care what kind of camera I'm using. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer about the Nikon. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, if you think it's worth it, if you can tell a difference, or would you just ditch it and get another FX3?